Hello folks, it is time for a kind of video that I've not done in quite some time, and that is a random ranty video on something that has kind of annoyed me recently and things that I've been reading about and stuff like that, and that is wasting your opponent's time in 40k and a wider hobby on the tabletop too. If you like what I do, please subscribe to the channel, it really does help me out. And if you want to join the Patreon, it's down below. And also, the Discord is free. You don't need to be on the Patreon to be involved in the Discord. It is also down below if you want to get some lovely help from other people in the hobby, just like yourself. When I have a little conflab down there, or if you've experienced any of these issues, that's the place to go and vent about it. I'm on there sometimes too. Rarely, but I am on there sometimes. Anyway, and I'm always watching. I know, I'm a bit weird like that. Anyway. Do not waste your opponent's time. It is one of the sacrosanct things that I have across my heart in this hobby. Being late for hobby time, in my opinion, is worse than being late for almost any other social event. Right? Don't get me wrong. Try not to be late when it's a one-on-one thing, do you know what I mean? It shows you don't value your friend's time. Even on the... This is the macro argument, right? This is even outside of the hobby. If you're late all the time for your friend, it just shows that you don't value their time. You don't value being around them as much as they value being around you. And that's a shitty thing to do to them. Yeah? Somebody said on the video yesterday that if somebody doesn't turn up to your stuff all of the time, you know, and is just fobbing you off and being really flaky with you, then you're the problem. Because they obviously don't like you, or you're doing something like that they don't like. Mate, I don't agree. I don't agree. There are better ways to go about not hanging out with somebody anymore than just standing them up. That is a really, really, really nasty thing to do. It shows you don't value their time, and it's an incredibly arrogant thing to do. And I'm also guilty of it. There is a huge regret for me in that I was really busy last year. Last year was one of the busiest years of my life in terms of work, a work-life balance, things like that. I was very happy. Things were going really well, but also, you know, very, 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 very stressful and busy year. But me and my now missus, we were sort of connecting, really starting to connect over the last year, 18 months. And, you know, we were heading out together, and I was almost always 10 to 15 minutes late. Now, I never thought it was a really big deal at the time, right? Until we finally got together and she put her foot down and told me how unacceptable it was to be late to meet your other half almost every time you organise to do something. And this is somebody with almost infinite levels of patience for, you know, my bullshit. So what happens when somebody who is putting in the effort into a stressful and time-consuming hobby thing is left in a lurch like this? Not good things is the answer, right? This is somebody who has infinite patience for North's bullshit. And even she, in the end, had to pull me aside and say, listen, this isn't acceptable. Like, this isn't nice. It makes me feel really shitty if you're late all the time because, you know, it makes me feel like you don't value my time or you think your time's more valuable than mine. I work too, you know? And she was right. She's completely right, and I adjusted my behaviour. That's the kind of thing that we have these days. Just on a slight tangent, a lot of people listening to that will be like, saying that I'm cowing down to my woman or something. That is a toxic thing in modern society, in that any time a man gives any sort of leeway whatsoever, other men seem to get really annoyed by that and get their backs up by that. Mate, it's called not being a dick and actually knowing when you're in the wrong, you know? Fight your corner when you know you're in the right. Absolutely. I'm on your side on that one. But when you're being a bit of a dick, just apologise and get on with it, right? But if Mrs. North, right, if she gets tired of that eventually, what about your friend who is doing 40k with you, who's painted their army, who's put it together, who's got their rules right in their heads, has turned up on time, has set up the terrain of the army, and everything's fine, he's booked everything in, maybe he's gone and gotten a drink, and you've not turned up for something like half an hour. What does that say to them? Because I'm just going on a date with my missus, right, that I'm 10 to 15 minutes late for. But this person's gone out of their way to give you their hobby time, which is insanely precious. And 40k as a game, to me, also is not really designed for you to be late. Because 40k, moving on to our 40k portion of the video, almost by design, is a tiring game to play. It is a fucking slog. 10th edition is shit. Right? I played my first couple of games in 10th edition, thought it was okay, because we were playing with the simpler rules. As soon as codexes start dropping, as soon as FAQs start coming out, the game's shit. It grinds to a halt. It absolutely... And by the way, as soon as I started playing people outside of my own little group, where we weren't really using... We didn't really use gotchas, we didn't really use stratagems very much. As soon as I got out of that group and I started playing games with other people, well, that's when the problems with 10th edition ground everything to a halt. It is a game of constant gotcha moments, of waiting around for long periods for your opponent to finish their turn, where you're doing absolutely nothing, of checking convoluted and often contradictory rules that are written by a company that seems to not give a shit about its flagship product. A 1.5 thousand point game of 40k, which is a small to medium-sized game, can regularly approach 4 to 5 hours of playtime between two people who are familiar but not obsessive about knowing the rules in their codexes, which is likely over 90% of you watching. Let's be honest. How many of you know your codexes inside and out? I would go on and say about 10% of you, and that's kind. That is a kind number for me to pull out there, right? 4 to 5 hours. So most of you in a small game like that will be spending 4 to 5 hours on a single game. That's to finish the game. Because at tournaments, most games aren't finished. They're finished by the time, you know, you've hit 3 hours, you can't do it anymore. But most games, you ask any tournament player, most competitive tournament games in 40k never really get past a third turn, which is why I don't play in them. Because why would I bother? We're not finishing our games. I could have won that game if it went for this fucking 3-hour time limit. But the game takes too long as it is. 4 to 5 hours for a small 40k game, lads and lasses. Add on to this the fact that one of you doesn't turn up for a good portion of your allotted time slot at the store, and at this point, what is even the point of continuing or even starting the game? Okay? You have to realise the game you're playing here. It is not designed for you to be late and not value your opponent's time. That's where we are. Should the game take less time? Yes. Yes. But that's not your opponent's fault. If you organise a game of 40k, make sure you're on time. Make sure you respect the other person's time and turn up nice and prompt, ready to go. The game takes enough time as it is. Alright? This goes too for actions during your game. We've seen this a lot in Hobby Nightmares, but have you ever slowed down a game on purpose? Have you ever questioned every rule to gain an advantage, or just because you don't really trust the motivations of your opponent? This is not a war of attrition in real life. It's a game that is supposed to be fun when you're playing with toy soldiers. Wasting your opponent's time to gain a win is doubly sad, as in reality, you're wasting your own time just as much. The game is designed to infuriate and slow you down already. Why make this harder than it needs to be? Okay? The game is designed to have gotchas. It's designed to grind itself to a halt at the merest contrivance. That the slightest thing that goes wrong in a game of 40k, the entire thing grinds to a halt. You're looking up stratagems, you're looking up quotations of rules, you're looking up different definitions of rules and different FAQ packs. You're looking up, all of these different things are going on all of the time. Okay? So if you're at a 40k table, listen, I know, it's really hard. We're all nerds here. We are all nerds who are sticklers for rules. That's why we're here, right? We're here to play a game by the rules and make sure that we're getting them right. The thing is, 40k isn't a game that really allows that kind of attitude to prosper. Why? Because it takes too fucking long, right? It takes too long. Wind your neck in when it comes to your rules. It got to the point in 40k, right, where I'd play against a friend of mine, Matt, and he would use all of his stratagems, right? And that's fine. I would use hardly any. I would use maybe 2 over and over and over again. Just the same 2. All the time. Why? Because I didn't want to slow down the game anymore. We were already 4 to 5 hours into the game and I wanted to throw myself out the window. I just stopped using all of these convoluted rules and started to use the baseline stats of the Grey Knights that I had, along with a few stratagems, 1 or 2. And I do that now every time somebody is obstinate and doesn't want to play one-page rules. If they want to play 40k with me, I will always, literally, pick 2 stratagems from my codex and only use those. Now, is that limiting to me? Yes. But do I have more fun? Also yes. And the games last a little bit shorter. Maybe 3 to 4 hours rather than 4 to 5 hours. But that's still far too long. Right? I still want to just give up at the end of the battle. I haven't had fun. Right? This has been a slog. We're supposed to be telling a story on the tabletop, and I want it all to end. I don't want to be here anymore with this game, right? And that's my advice to you. If you're finding it really difficult, the way to get around 10th edition is to simply play the game in the spirit that Games Workshop want you to play it in. Games Workshop are terrible at one thing. As somebody who regularly writes rules for my own games, right? You need to do one thing very, very, very clearly. You need to make sure that you're not just trusting your players to not be assholes. Yeah. Every time I write an RPG, every time I write a rule, I'm doing it in black and white. Because I can't trust you guys not to take my rules and be assholes with them so you can create really overpowered characters, units, and all these other things. Because if you give nerds leeway like that, they're going to take the piss. And Games Workshop have always been terrible at that. One thing that really grinds my gears with RPGs these days, have you ever read an RPG book like Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or whatever, right? At the very start of the book, they say, listen, if there's a rule in this book that's kind of counterintuitive to you having fun, just ignore it and don't play it and make up your own. No, mate, I've just paid £35 for your stupid fucking book. Why don't you write rules that are more cohesive and robust for me to use? Why don't you do that, rather than expecting me to do your job for you? It really irks me. It's one of my main peeves. Whenever I see that in a book, I'm like, so you just gave up then? So you couldn't be bothered writing balanced rules, you just gave up, right? That's something Games Workshop almost started in Warhammer 40,000. It's been in every single Warhammer 40,000 book, where they just, at the very start, they go, if you don't like your rules, don't play with it. Who cares, right? The entire game is designed, they don't care. They don't know. It's almost like they expect you all to be angels and wonderful people who take these really convoluted, broken rules, and they expect you to play like gentlemen. They expect you to play like, hey, I know I've got 20 stratagems that I could use to really slow the game down, but I'm only going to pick 2 and use only those 2. Because I want the game to flow really well, and I don't want to be a dick to my friend over here. So I'm gonna tell him what I'm doing, and let's see if he wants to do the same thing. Oh, he does. Great. We're gonna have a 2.5 hour game of Warhammer 40,000, and everything's gonna be fine and dandy with the world. Nobody does that. Nobody does that. But that's what Games Workshop expects you to do with 10th edition. They expect you to be nice to each other. They expect you to play the rules like gentlemen and go, listen, I know the rules say I can do this, but I'm not going to do that because it would ruin the fun for my opponent. That's it. They expect you to play like that. They are deluded because most of you don't. Most of you, quite rightly so, if you want to win the game, most of you play by the rules verbatim. And you say, no, I can use as many stratagems as I like in this game, you know? As long as I do them when the game says I can do them. I've got 20 stratagems to use. I can pick any one of them to use whenever I want to, whenever they can be played, and I'll play them. Even if it slows the games down to a halt. Formations back in the day. Formations came out in 7th edition, right? One, to sell models that weren't selling already, but two, to give people options with their armies, because they thought you would use said formations as part of larger armies. They didn't think you would use an entire army of 3 formations in the single army that's completely broken and unbeatable to batter all your friends with. They all thought you'd be nice, and they've never learned, and they never will learn. Because policing your own, gatekeeping and putting strict black and white rules into your own game takes effort. It takes effort. I know, because I do it. It takes ages to playtest rules, to make sure they're robust, to make sure people aren't taking the fucking piss with them. It takes effort and playtesting, and it takes a while to do. A year or 2 for a single game of playtesting, minimum, to get a balanced set out there. That's really convoluted. If you want like 50 pages of rules, it's going to take 1 or 2 years to playtest that shit, to make sure it's balanced and to make sure it's robust enough to go to market. Most people, especially self-published people, can't be arsed doing that. And so they say, just make up your own rules if you don't like mine. No, I just paid you £120 for the fucking Leviathan box set. You tell me the rules. Okay? You write the rules, I play with the rules. I shouldn't need a fucking interpreter in my head, right, to sift through the bullshit to have a balanced game. Write a balanced game so we're not standing here for hours upon hours upon hours doing nothing. They trust you to not be arseholes. But the thing is, when you present a nerd with options that make their stuff really powerful, they're going to use them. That doesn't make them arseholes, right? I'm not saying you know, but you're going to use them. I am the outlier here. I'm fully aware of that. All I can say to you is, if you find that you're wasting a lot of time, of your opponent's time and your own in 40k, the best thing to do is to play the game like a gentleman. Read the rules and know that you can take the piss. Really, you can take the piss by doing certain things with the 40k rule set. You can really slow down the game because you want to eke out every single bit of power from your list. But what if you don't do that? What if you look at your stratagems, pick 2 that you really like and stick to them? And use them appropriately, right? What if you don't delay combat? What if you are honourable and you go with the spirit of 40k, and when combat and a challenge is presented by your opponent, you pick that challenge and you go, yeah, I'm going to do that. Why? Well, I know I'm going to die. It's 40k, god damn it. I'm going to get my chainsword or my scalpel or whatever, I'm going to smash it into your face. And I'm probably going to die, but screw it, I'm doing it, right? Play 40k in the spirit of 40k. Tournaments, I'm going to be honest, have been a big bane for this. They've been a big, big drawback for this kind of attitude, where people come in and they say, well, the rules let me do it, so I'm going to do it. Mate, I don't want to be here for 4 or 5 hours. You're now wasting my time, right? Okay? That's how I play 40k. I'm sorry if you think that I'm preaching to you, or I'm telling you there's only one way to play 40k, but if you want to stop wasting your opponent's time, there's only really one way to do it, right? And that's to interpret Games Workshop's rules as a gentleman, saying, look, I know I could do this, but it would grind down the game to a halt, so I'm not going to. I could use a stratagem in every single phase and every single one of my opponent's phases of the game. I could do that, right? But it would slow down the game to a crawl, and I'm not going to do it, because it wouldn't be fun for me or for him. So I'm not going to. I'm going to use these 2 stratagems. I'm going to really eke out and test myself as a general. The game gets harder when you can't do that. So when you get wins, it's euphoric. You're like, yeah, you're fist pumping. You're loving it, right? That's my advice for 40k if you're really struggling with the way the game is designed by default. So let's go into role playing. Let's pull this into the tabletop role-playing sphere, shall we? Alright. So, I'm going to relay a story to you about respecting your DM's time. So, when I was at university, generally, I was 24. I was a bit older than everybody else, and everybody else was very, very, shall we say, shy. You know? Quite rightly so. It's university. It's a it's a nervous time, right? Let me take a sip of tea before I carry on. So at university, it's a wanton time of nervousness and being around people that you don't know. Thing is, I've been working in a bar in Liverpool for several years at this point. I'd had dozens of girlfriends. I'd lived a life by the time I was 24, right? I'd done a bit in life, and I thought I knew everything, of course, because you're a moron, and when you're in your 20s or your early 20s, and early 20s is a dangerous age because you're not quite Bambi anymore. Do you know what I mean? And you instantly think you know everything, especially when you're in university. It's really, really dangerous because everyone else is 18 and they're looking to you for answers. You don't have any fucking answers. You're a moron too, but they don't know that. Neither do you most of the time. Anyway, I loved role-playing. I loved role-playing games. I played loads of them in my time before university. And so, when I got there, the nerds kind of glomped onto the fact that I liked to DM. I liked to be a dungeon master. And so we put together a game of Dungeons and Dragons. And I swear to you, that first campaign that I did of D&D is still one of the most legendary things that I've ever done in my own time. It was absolutely lovely. So, I've told the story before, but for those of you not in the know, it started out with 3 players on a Sunday afternoon in winter. We're sitting there in my dorm room, in my room. I've got my own room there, ensuite. Thank you very much, double. Thank you very much. And we're sitting there just having a game of D&D. And I set it in my own world. So my own world I created that had 60 pages worth of background lore, really, really cool stuff. Terribly written, but it is what it is. And they really appreciated it. They read it all cover to cover. They thought, this is great, this is amazing. And they all jumped in with both feet and had an amazing time. And those first few sessions were really rewarding for me. Because they were the first people to really look at my work and go, this is great, I love this. And really lit a fire under me to do more. And as time went on, word kind of spread throughout the university's geek circles that there was a D&D game going on, and it was really good. And so we went to 4 people, then 5 people, then 6 people, then 7 people, and in the end we had 8 people in the same campaign as we raced towards the end of the campaign. And the end of the campaign saw the original 3. They went from being, just these normal mercenaries trying to get into a city because there was an army on the way to besiege the city, to, a year and a half later, leading the defense of the siege. And the evil section of the party, the 4 players who were kind of evil, went over to the enemy side, and we had this amazing cataclysmic final battle over the city, which was great, and we had a lot of fun, and we were able to draw that thing to a close nice and, shall we say, in a satisfying manner, right? It was really, really good. So, as the years went on, I did more D&D campaigns in different settings, just to have a bit of fun. Until one day, these people started playing with each other, as in, playing different D&D games with each other off and away, which is great, because now we're spreading the hobby, and that's great. The hurtful thing is that if I started one campaign, and people just stopped turning up in one of the campaigns that I was doing. It's like my last one, really, because I do one at a time, and people were loving the campaign, we're having a lot of fun, but 2 of the lads who were in that campaign that I was doing were doing campaigns of their own, or were in other campaigns as well, and they just stopped turning up, and they were 2 out of the 4 people in the party. That really hurt, because not only was I the person to bring them into the hobby, not only was I putting a lot of effort and soul into what I was doing, but they were also wasting other players' time too, right? That was really annoying to me. And the worst thing was, these were not, I can't come because X, or I can't come because Y. Don't get me wrong, if you do that to me 3 times, I ban you. If you tell me I'm ill 3 times, right at the last minute, before you come to a session of mine, I ban you. Because the likelihood of that is very, very, very small. Unless I know something's going on, like, you've got cancer or something awful like that, right, then no problem. But if you're saying to me you've got a cold, 3 times in 6 months and you cry off and you cause problems for me, you're not welcome at my table anymore. That's it. You've got to have standards as a DM. You've got to have time standards and standards of behavior at your table. These guys didn't even do that. They just no-showed. No text, no nothing. And it made me look like a fucking dickhead, because you're sitting there with these other players just twiddling your thumbs. And I had one big blowout where I literally messaged them and said, listen, don't bother coming back. Don't bother. And they were really taken aback by that. They were like, oh, wow. Why are you being like that? Well, this is like the 4th time you've done this. You've now shown a session I'm putting on. Like, there's no excuse for this. You don't value my time. You don't value my energy that I put in. You don't value what I do. So go fuck yourself. Don't come back. And that hurt me a lot more than it should have done. But you know why? Because DMs are an abused breed. We put in so much effort into what we're doing. And if you don't turn up, if you don't respect our time, that's the lowest of the low. That's lower than being a shitty 40k player. Way lower. Way lower. Because at least with your fellow 40k people, you're putting in a similar amount of effort into turning up and actually playing your game. If you're a player, you're putting in a 10th of the effort that your DM puts in to organising the game and getting you all there and making sure you're all having fun. A 10th of the effort, and you're never appreciated for it. You know? So if you're wasting your DM's time, or you've ever done this, go fuck yourself and look yourself in the mirror. You need to take a serious look at yourself in the mirror. Okay? Being ill's fine. Even cancelling last minute is fine, as long as you don't do it more than 2 or 3 times. Right? Okay? Cancelling last minute even. I would even say that. I'm very... If I don't know you very well, and you cancel last minute, I kind of delete you from my black book of players. I kind of go, nah, not for me. I've no-showed 1 session. That's because I was comatose with COVID. Right? I literally didn't wake up in the morning. Went to sleep at 3 o'clock. Was supposed to be there for about 12 o'clock the next day. Didn't wake up. I woke up at about 4 o'clock the next day. 4 o'clock PM the next day. You know? That's the one, and that was Black Coats, that actually. And that was the one that I never showed for. And I was so guilty about that. I was so guilt-ridden about that. But it's nothing much I could do, obviously. But, like, again, I felt really awful about it. But do not, if you have got no excuse at all, if you're not ill, or if you just don't want to go, you owe it to your dungeon master to be honest and say, look, man, this isn't really working for me. You know, I'd rather just go and play something else. I don't want to waste your time. I appreciate the time you put in, so I hope you find somebody else, but I'm not going to be at the session because I need to back out from the campaign. That's no problem. I've had people say that to me before, right? Your games are too dark, your games are too visceral, your games are too this or too that. Fine. No problem, my man. You know, it wasn't for you. Go and do what you want to do. I'm absolutely fine with that. And you know what? Hopefully, in the future, if I do another game, you find that one is for you, and we go and play some games together. But for now, no problem. I'll see you later. That's all you get from me as a DM, I'm telling you. You know? Because I respect you for not wanting to waste my time. But if you just don't show up, or you start showing up late, or you don't take my campaign seriously, or you don't play it in the spirit that it's meant for, despite being warned. I've had that too. I've had people turn up to my really grim dark setting sometimes. If I'm doing a grim dark one, and they turn up with all these D&D hijinks and, you know, all of that other stuff. And I'm just like, no, mate, that's not the game we're playing. Like, you need to respect the time that I put in. Like, stop trying to railroad it into being this, you know, furry fantasy that you want. Again, all that kind of shit. DMs put up with that all the time. Don't waste their time. Don't. Those are that's why I've drawn specific light to it. This is the one section of tabletop games as a whole who should not have their time wasted. Dungeon masters, game masters, whatever you want to call them, storytellers. They should not have their time wasted. There are bad DMs, I'm not saying there aren't, right? But if they are, just leave. Go and play in another game, but don't waste their time. Because even if they are dickhead DMs, they put 10 times more effort into that campaign than you would ever have done in your life, right? You do not know how much effort they would have put in. Alright, are there exceptions to the rule? Yes, but it's still the rule for a reason. Alright? Don't waste your DM's time, please. It's really, really bad form, and what's more, it's really hurtful. It's really hurtful. Especially if they put in as much effort as I do. You don't realise, if you've got a good DM in your group, you don't realise how lucky you are. The vast majority, 9 out of 10 people in the role-playing sphere are players. Selfish players at that, who want all about them all the time. But most of the people playing tabletop RPGs are players. If you've got a DM in your group who loves creating worlds, who loves telling stories, and is talented at those two things, you have no idea how fucking lucky you are. You are literally you've hit the jackpot. Do not waste that person's time. Do not turn them off of their creativity and creating nice things for you, because you will miss it. I still get messages from those lads asking to come in on my games. And I always say no. You will miss it. Trust me. It will come back to bite you on the arse. Alright? So why have I made all of these points? I've used 40k in tabletop role-playing games. Why have I used all of them? Why have I made all of these points in the first place? Well, hobby time is precious. I say this all of the time. It is one of the sacrosanct pillars of what we do here. You know, on this channel. Choose your opponents carefully and your fellow players carefully. Gatekeep your space in a positive manner. Have standards for the hobby that you're in and what you do here. But welcome people with open arms if they meet those standards. If they want to be involved in 40k, if they want to be involved in what Horus Heresy is, welcome them in with open arms, no matter their race, gender, creed, whatever. Welcome them in. If they want to do what you're doing. If they want to be involved in your hobby. Same thing goes for role-playing games. If you're doing a grimdark setting, if you want to play in a grimdark setting, welcome. If you're doing a D&D, light-hearted one, you want to play in that, welcome. But make sure the signposts are there, the goalposts are there, that people know all the time what to expect. Right? That's another key tenet of what we do. The third one, hobby time is precious. And I've always wanted to do a video like this one on that part. Because it's not really covered. Those are the 3 tenets, really. Those are the 3. Right? Choose the people around you very carefully in the hobby. Gatekeep in a positive manner. And realise that all hobby time is precious. It is time away from the stress of life, and to some people who work hard jobs, have difficulties at home, or who are generally suffering from depression or anxiety or whatever's going on in their life, the hobby may be their escape just for a little while. So if you don't bother turning up for 30 minutes to an hour, and if, when you do show, you slow the game down and make the entire thing unpleasant and tiring for them and you are doing more than inconveniencing somebody. You're killing their hobby time. And by extension, you're killing the hobby. Don't do it. Alright? Awesome. I love you all a long time. I will speak to you tomorrow with some more hobby nightmares. We have an absolute doozy about a Games Workshop manager raging because people are using the wrong models in his store. And it's not what you think. I know a lot of you are thinking, well, are they using, like, really weird models? No. I'll let you know tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. I love you all a long time. See you then. Have a good one. Bye now.